Good evening. This is Buddy Thayer, paranormal investigator, live. The Ghost and the Goat for March 26th, Tuesday, 2000 and was it 24? Excuse me, this evening I'm a little backwards. I'm a little slow. I'm currently undergoing treatment and overcoming my fourth um, bout with COVID. I was lucky enough that my boss went away to Florida last week. I'm sipping my delicious orange juice. And beautiful state of Florida, beautiful people that live in Florida. Unfortunately, there's a lot of people that visit Florida and they bring their COVID to Florida. And she brought her COVID home to me. And I am thoroughly grateful for a 5 day rest and recovery time. So before we get going today, I just want to give a big shout out to the people in Baltimore, the victims of the Francis Scott Key Bridge failure collision. That's absolutely atrocious. Our hearts, our prayers, our wishes, our thoughts go out to those folks tonight. So tonight, I am usually joined. You usually see the goat's face come on first. He's a lively fellow. He's from the Fall River, New Bedford area. He usually comes on and talks sports a little bit. We jib a jab about sports. But Brendan the Bams, the goat, his barn, which is up in Wellfleet, Mass. He's walking back to his stall in New Bedford. He's running a little bit late. He left the barn a little bit late tonight, so he'll be joining us a little bit later. But tonight, I'm very excited to welcome. It's only our third show, so I can't say I'm welcoming back. But I've talked to this guy a few times. He's a really cool cat. We'll have a lot to say about the area where Bams comes from. It's too bad that Bams isn't here right now. But our guest tonight is a writer, a researcher, a folklorist, and current host of the podcast Tripping on Legends. He has been documenting the paranormal, the unexplained since 1994, and has been a figure in the paranormal world through his books, articles, and his work as the director of Massachusetts Paranormal Crossroads and now Tripping on Legends. He is the author of several books, mainly about the area of the Bridgewater Triangle and the Freetown State Forest out there in Massachusetts. The Ghosts of the Bridgewater Triangle, as well as collections, true ghost stories from ghostly adventures, haunted objects, and how-to paranormal books. Picture yourself ghost hunting, and I'm sorry, picture yourself capturing ghosts on film. That's got to be a good one. I'm sorry, Chris, I haven't read it. He has been a contributor to Jeff Ellinger's Encyclopedia Haunted Places and Weird Massachusetts, and was one of the writers behind Weird Hauntings. He has appeared in more than a dozen other books and across different medias. He's been on television series talking about conversations with a serial killer. I'd love to pick his brain more on this. So we're just going to bring him right on, and he can give you the rest of his resume. Welcome to the show, Chris Balzano.
Welcome, Chris. Hey, how you doing?
Pretty good, man. Pretty good.
Good. So you were actually right in the same time, right and wrong.
Okay.
There are two books. One's called they were this one company's attempt at like dummy guides.
Okay.
And so there was a series of books called Picture Yourself. So it was Picture Yourself Ghost Hunting, and probably the worst book I've ever written, which is Picture Yourself Capturing Ghosts on Film.
Oh, God.
So it was two of them. So on one hand, you were right, and then you mixed them. And on the other hand, no, don't go read Picture Yourself Capturing Ghosts on Film. It's horrific. It's horrible.
Why is it so bad, Chris? I mean, we're usually quick to judge our own stuff, but please tell us why it's so horrible.
It's because it sounds really good when you say it, right? Like, wouldn't you like to create a book that establishes a really effective way to capture ghosts on film, to take ghost pictures, right? And to canonize to some degree, like what investigators should be looking for and how to do good techniques and stuff like that. And it's once you initially say it, it's after that it kind of falls apart, right? Because so much of evidence, and I should state right from the top that I am no longer an evidence guy. Like that, I could care less about evidence now. That's not what I do.
Hmm.
And the book was part of that reason, because no matter how good your picture is, you could have faked it. And so once everybody comes out and throws out the 5 things that they know about what makes a picture not a ghost, then it ultimately comes down to, but it could still have been faked. And so you're spending more time defending your honor than you are defending the picture, right? And you shouldn't even have to defend the picture, because most people who put things out, they put things out as a way to reach out and say, hey, what do you guys think this is? And you've probably seen these attacks, which is why I don't follow a lot of investigator pages and stuff. It then becomes a barrage of, I would say, cliche, like kind of just go to the mat and say these 5 things and sound really smart doing it. Only you don't sound smart, because everyone says the same 5 things. And so it was really one of those things where, and on top of that, I don't even think I had an iPhone when I wrote that book, right? The technology of phones and the technology of editing software has so dramatically changed that the book was basically obsolete by the time it came out, And so combined with those 2 things, is it well written? It's a stretch, because like, how much can you actually say? A book this thick, how can you write a book this thick? A few hundred pages on, it's probably dust.
Right.
So
that's where it sucks as an investigator. Where you have a photo, or you have like a bit of film, and you want to like say, hey, share it with the world and scream out from the rooftops, look, I caught a ghost. There's so many other things that it could be, and people on social media are so quick to shoot it down and to make you look like just a jackass rather than
and I think part of it is unlike other parts of the paranormal, part of it is the people want to sound smart, they want to sound like experts, and people genuinely feel like the paranormal is about proving things not right. And so I don't think it's necessarily it's almost as if the person who presented the evidence is irrelevant. Like, I would say that's changed. I would say back in the day it was much more attack person. But it's not as much these days. But I see it, and so I do a ghost tour. By the way, I am the land of your COVID. I live in Florida now. My most recent books are about Florida. And so I live. Where do you live? Where are you? You're from Massachusetts?
I'm in Rhode Island, Chris.
Okay.
The goat is in New Bedford. I'm in
New Bedford. Okay. So Rhode Island. So I live near Fort Myers. I live outside Fort Myers. So I can say that to New England people, because they're the only ones who know where Fort Myers is, because that's where the Sox play, right?
That's where the Sox play, right? Yeah.
Right. So I run a tour downtown Fort Myers now.
Nice.
And I was going through, and I encourage people on the tour to take pictures and all this stuff. And I was going through, and a woman at one of these locations, it's a beautiful story. It's an old brothel, serial killer, disappearing women. An investigative team came in, and what happened was so horrific. The investigator herself refused to enter the building afterwards. It's a really great story. And I say to them, as the investigators came through, like they came through the house this way, the hotel this way, take pictures of this window here. Well, the owner of the building, which is really abandoned, right? It's just to bring it up to code is just so expensive. So he just lets it there because he doesn't want to give up the prime real estate, can't develop it. He knows that the ghost tour talks about this old hotel. And so one week I went, and he had a mannequin in the window that said, if you like this haunting, drop money in our lucky, our lucky barrel underneath, right?
Yep.
And so I'm going on the tour, and I'm kind of saying that, they're playing with it. Next day, one of the people on the tour comes back, and they've got what has to be like one of the most compelling ghost photos I've ever seen in my life, right? And I'm checking the pixels of it because she wants an answer, and she wants kind of an extension of the fun we had on the tour. And so, like, okay, I'll look at your evidence. And it was like, wow, should I put this out there to people, right? Should I put this out there and see what other people think? And da 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 da.
Mhm.
And so, we do the tours Wednesdays and Saturdays. I get to Saturday's tour. I go there. It's daytime. I go there. I'm taking pictures. And yeah, it's a cutout in the window.
Mhm.
Right. So I clearly see the face. Right. But it's one of those things where, it could be so many different things that it's just such a weird branch to hang yourself, to go out on, that I just, and the worst part is when you do that, you then become an authority, right? Because then
Right.
for a while, everywhere I went, people wanted me to show their pictures, and
Of
there's
course.
nothing more boring than looking at other people's ghost pictures.
Right. And you don't know the context at all. You
And you
can't
don't know, right? And then how do you say to that person, it's not a ghost, right? Like, people really have pride and they take it and even when you can say, when it's clear that something else is going on. So I said to the owner of the tour, I said, hey, I should email her back and say, here's a picture of and she was like, no, don't. She gave us a good review. So, it's and that's the lesson I learned, right? Like, people don't want to hear that it's not a ghost. And so it's easier. I just go to say, well, what do you think is going on in this picture? The same thing I do as a teacher. What do you think it is? And that engages them in a different conversation. And we haven't even talked about intent, right? And things like psychic photography and how much of that, which is, the unmeasurable part of the paranormal, how much of taking a picture of a ghost is that ghost wants you to see it, or your intention or energy you might be putting out there. And it's just way too complicated. So don't buy the book. I don't get any royalties on it anyway, so don't buy it anyway.
That's a pretty good review, man, of your own. I mean, it's pretty terrible of your own work, but I mean, it's pretty good review for people who might want to buy it.
It's fun, and this is maybe another very telling thing about the paranormal field. I've been down here in Florida. It's coming up on 16 years, which is a really, really long time.
Yeah.
And I wrote Picture Yourself Ghost Hunting right before I left here. So that book is about 16 years old. I still have investigators down here in Florida, so not even from Massachusetts, where I was from when I wrote it, approach me at conferences or whatever and say, I have that book. I give it to all my investigators when I'm training them and stuff like that. So it's, it's interesting that either the book's really good and universal, or that kind of stuff doesn't change.
Yeah, no. Yeah, that probably doesn't change. And then you get things like people will present online what they swear is, this is, as an investigator, this is something that it baffles my mind, but I just kind of got to let it go, because people will get so offended. Is that if they take a picture and it's clearly they're like, oh, she's this orb.
Yeah.
Or dust, or that is you can see where the light is reflecting and causing this to happen.
Yeah, it's usually not out of fakerage, right?
No.
It's usually out of a genuine concern for it. But
course.
those ghost pictures are people's babies, man. And you know what? Because they want to believe, not because they want to deceive. And so, it's really hard to deflate that, especially when it's really, really easy to.
Yeah, of course.
But then there's also this, like we were talking about at the very start, there's this arrogance to, I'm so great, I can say everything that's fake, right? And it's
right.
And you're at some point it becomes, you're just kind of patting your own back.
Yeah.
Great way to start.
What can you say about true ghost hunting? Say start up this way. You started in 1994? What got you going into it? What did you have an experience? What just baffled by the Bridgewater Triangle?
Yeah,
what is it?
It's no. I was years away from really discovering that. It is. Most people who are into this are they've experienced something. They had something that triggered it, or me. It was a completely academic situation. I was obsessed with horror movies. I was obsessed. I always say I'm the first generation that was able to sneak downstairs while their parents were asleep and watch The Exorcist on HBO.
Nice.
And that was kind of that was big, right? That was And at the same time, you have the rise of Stephen King and his books being made into movies. Mm-hmm. And I was a latchkey kid, but the door was the public library.
Yeah.
And so my mom would say, like, walk from school to the library and I'll pick you up at 6. Mm-hmm. And that was 4 hours. And that was every day. And so I just consumed everything. Yep. And I just had more of an obsession with the story. And when
Stephen King's a phenomenal writer.
What'd you say?
Stephen King is a phenomenal writer.
Yeah, and it's I'm listening, not reading, because I try to listen more than read because it relaxes me more, and it's better for my eyes. I'm reading The Dark Tower again, right? And I know I'm going to go Dark Tower, and I'm going to go The Stand again. I'm going to go, and there's something kind of comforting in that, and it's also the accessibility of that that horror, and he's more than willing to demean himself and say that it's like Pulp Fiction horror, but that's kind of what gets you hooked, right? So,
I remember I read for summer reading my freshman year at LaSalle Academy in Providence, Rhode Island. I had to pick one of my books. I got assigned Shoeless Joe, which was an awesome book about became Field of Dreams. Even
Shoeless Joe Goes to Iowa.
Yeah, and then I picked Salem's Lot by Stephen King. I had never read Stephen King. I had seen his movies because I had gone to the local video store from age 6 and was able to rent R-rated movies because nobody really cared back in those days. And back in those days, like 25 years ago. Yeah. And I absolutely fell in love with Stephen King at Salem's Lot. I grabbed it. I grabbed The Stand. I just Cujo, everything I could by him. It just his storytelling. Yeah. I mean, it's a little in depth. He goes a little bit beyond the normal like A to Z story, but I mean, he does a lot of the history behind it, which I'm a big history guy. So that's like reading it was like. I
remember there's a scene in the book of Christine. Yep. Where the action of what happens is that Christine drives by itself or herself, however you want to say it, outside the parking garage, right? That's the action. It's like 50 pages, because it's all about the guy who's running the parking lot, and I can't wait to get home tonight, and and it's all this stuff. And then at the end of the chapter, the Christine drives by, and there's a tendency to be like, well, why did I just have to read that? Except for the fact that it's world building, right? And it's stuff like that. So yeah, I think the accessibility, and then at that time, like we're talking early 80s. That's when those string of movies of his that were really good came out. Yes, so that was the Christine time and Children of the Corn, and I remember. My parents had a copy of Children of the Corn, like the movie version of Children of the Corn, like with the movie cover, the way they used to do. And of course, that is not Cemetery. I'm trying to think of what that collection is called. But 3/4 of the short stories in that book became movies. Yeah, right. So the first
Stand by Me, that whole.
Well, it wasn't that, but Children of the Corn. Sometimes They Come Back, The Boogeyman, which they just remade, Trucks, which became Maximum Overdrive, Quitters Incorporated was part of Cat's Eye, and so I don't know if you know these like this kind of book, but it's when they reissue it as the movie, and they've got like halfway through, they've got pictures from the movie, like 16 pages of pictures, right? Yeah, yep. And so I was reading that. It was 5th grade. I was reading that, and my teacher came out. And she pulled the book out of my hand. She's like, "You can't be reading this trash." And she flipped to the section of the pictures. And it was right in the middle of probably my favorite Stephen King story, which is Sometimes They Come Back. And there were about 3 F-bombs, a reference to sex, and something else on the page. And I was suspended. So deep history. I guess all of this is to say that I became obsessed with the horror story, how we tell horror stories, why we tell them. And when I got to college at Emerson, my dorm was a haunted dorm. right? So
Oh.
my dorm, my freshman sophomore year at Emerson was the old Charles Gate Hotel.
Oh.
And
No, Emerson. Is that Boston? Where's Emerson?
yeah, in
Yeah.
Boston, down to in Kenmore Square.
Oh,
So
all
where
right.
the Sox
Very,
play. And
very
so
historic.
yeah, and it was back then especially it was still a great neighborhood. A lot of if you took aside the heroin addicts, it was a really great neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
And it was haunted, and people were having experiences, and I started documenting them. This is why I always say 94 is when I started looking into this, because it's when I really first started to document ghost stories that people were telling me. And when they would tell me, I would then go try to experience like what they were experiencing, right? And there was no equipment back then, so it'd be like take a transistor radio and put it on AM and scroll it, and see if you can get someone talking to you, things like that, right? Like
right.
Ouija boards, divining rods, things like that. But then I would say to them, "What story have you heard of? Why this? Why the why? Why is this happening?" And they would tell me a story, and I'm like, I've heard that story like 17 different times about 17 different hauntings.
Right.
And so I became obsessed with the crossroads, which is where a true haunting intersects with where we make up stories about it. And we should embrace both of those. This is why investigators don't necessarily like what I do.
All right.
I think, you take something, so you're in Rhode Island, you take something like the redheaded hitchhiker of Route 44.
Yep.
That is a story that you could very easily, as an investigator, disprove, right? And yet there's sighting after sighting after sighting, right? And so you have to kind of take notice of that. But then there are clearly things that have never happened having to do with the red-headed hitchhiker that have been added because they're part of folklore in general about hitchhiking hauntings, right? About roadside ghosts that have until recently never been said about the red-headed hitchhiker, but now they are. And you have to embrace that the legend changes as well, right? And so that's kind of has been my driving force. And so, it's as an investigator, I had plenty of experiences, but since I moved to Florida and now kind of do more of that legend tripping kind of aspect of it with no equipment, stuff like that, I've had more experiences and more intense experiences. So,
that's cool. No, that's very cool. I think that's how I first got into it. We didn't call it legend tripping at the time, but as teenagers, we wanted to know more about all these experiences. I had experiences as a kid, and I really was like just interested. I didn't really now I'm able to relate what happens to me now as to what happened to me then, and okay, maybe there's some kind of connection. But as a teenager, I just wanted to really get out there. So we go to Mercy Brown, we go to Billy Vaughan. Some of the vampires are in Rhode Island. We go to the lad school. We go into the lad school. Trespassing, I guess you could call it.
No one's judge. Statute of limitations is over on that. Don't worry.
Right. I got into that legally afterwards, so I guess it's all a wash. Just trying to experience what other people experience, but it never really happened for us. And it was exciting to go to these places, and you were always on edge. And I think that kind of led people to it kind of led people to believe that they were experiencing a haunting because they would take something completely out of context and that they were experiencing, and because they were just focusing on the haunt, it automatically became an experience for them. I don't know. I never really had any.
It's so legend tripping is just very similar to that, right? So it says I just learned as much as I can about the history of the town. You have to, if you're doing Mercy Brown, right? You just go through and you would say, what is the history of Mercy Brown? What is its connection to the community? Is the community impacted by it now? Things like that.
Yep.
And then, and I don't think there is a Mercy Brown ritual. But if there was a ritual attached, so for example, the redheaded hitchhiker, right? When I went out the first time I ever went out to Rehoboth, before I even knew what the Bridgewater Triangle was, we were out there on the field in Rehoboth. And we would just drive back and forth on 44, right at that intersection, right at the border of Seekonk, waiting for him to appear, right?
Yep.
And then as I started to write about it, whether it's people attaching the legends or people, all of a sudden it became, no, you have to go to the line of the town You have to turn off your headlights. You have to honk the horn 3 times.
Oh boy.
And you have to, right? So as a legend tripper, not only do I love documenting the evolution of those stories, but then, like, why are they doing that? Like, why is it? How is it changing? And now, like, why I go out on the field and I would do that? Can I give you a really good example?
Please, yes.
So I'm going to give you a Florida example, but I got a feeling you'll like this. Have you ever seen the movie Jeepers Creepers?
Yes.
So that was filmed in my most recent book is called the Haunted Ocala National Forest, right? Mm-hmm. Which is in Central Florida, probably about an hour and 45 minutes north of Orlando, if you're trying to get some bearings. And one of the towns, Denellen, was where they shot Jeepers Creepers, right? Nice. And it was right next to a school, Denellen High School. And as they started to shoot the movie, they actually discovered they had to move the shooting of it because, I don't know if you know this, but Victor Salvo, who wrote and directed it, was a convicted pedophile, right? He had not only molested children, but he had filmed it, right? And so they didn't even realize this until they shot, and it was like, he can't film here. Like, he's got to be 500 yards away from the school.
Oh, my God.
Right? So there's this stretch of road. So if you've seen, and now I'm totally going to ruin the movie for you. If you've seen Jeepers Creepers, that opening scene of the brother and the sister driving down the stretch of road, it's Fred Flintstone. It's just the same stretch of road over and over again, right?
Oh, yeah.
It's this road that's called Tiger Tail Road because the local high school of the Tigers, right?
Yep.
So I started hearing the ghost stories associated with this, which initially was like a family of ghost children, right?
Oh boy.
And these ghost children, and it was like almost like 2 teenagers and 2 like 9-year-olds, like that age group, right? And they would be walking across the road, right?
Yep.
And then you would stop. And you would stop and you would see these kids, and oh my word, the place is haunted. And maybe there's a curse on it because of all this weird stuff that happened because of the movie. Well, then you fast forward a few years later, and the trends in the paranormal change. And so as you're driving down the stretch of road, you see one of the kids in your back seat.
Yep.
And they look at you, and it's a black-eyed kid, right? Because now black-eyed kids are popular, right? So that's going on. You following me? All right. So I'm watching this change because now the kids you're seeing in the street are also black-eyed kids.
Oh boy. And
so what happens is you see the kids in the road, you stop. Now these are the people saying like, this happened to me 10 years ago. It happened to me 20 years ago. And I'm like, no, then where was it 10 years ago? The story's new. And you're driving down the road and you stop because there's these people in the road. And then all of a sudden, tap, 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 tap. A black-eyed kid is tapping on your window asking to be let into your car.
Oh.
Right?
Yeah.
So the story's changed.
Yeah.
Then fast forward a few more years. God, I'm feeling old that I've been doing this long, that even here, like 15 years. And the movie came out and it was called Butterfly Kisses. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Butterfly Kisses.
I don't think so, no.
So and I'm not really spoiling it, so you can still go see it. It's a, It's a found footage movie. Mm-hmm. And it's about these kids in a very Blair Witch style who are going out tracking the local legend of, I think his name is Peeping Tom.
Yep.
And the deal is you're supposed to stare down this haunted railroad bridge without blinking for an hour. And if you can make it the entire hour, Peeping Tom will appear at the end of the bridge, right? And every time you close your eyes, he gets a little bit closer and a little bit closer and a little bit closer until he's so close that his eyelashes are giving you butterfly kisses.
Eee.
And then he kills you, right?
Oh.
And so the plot of the movie involves them filming it. So it's every time they turn off the camera, he's closer. So it's a pretty good, like found footage kind of movie. After that movie came out, the Jeepers Creepers haunting changed again. Because now all you're supposed to do, you're supposed to go to the site and you're supposed to shut off your lights. Mm-hmm. And when you turn them back on, there is a shadow man who looks eerily like Jeepers Creepers off in the distance. And every time you turn your lights on, turn them off, turn them on, turn them off, he gets closer and closer and closer until he kills you.
Jesus, I don't know if I'd want to keep my eyes open for an hour. That seems
that's right. Like that's what you're stuck on, right? That
right there. I'm sick of. I can't even get past that. Forget about the guy trying to kill me and everything.
I think even in the movie, they insult that part of it. Like, how could this legend be true? How can you even keep your eyes open for an hour without blinking?
Right? You know? Who wants to do that?
But isn't that what like urban legends are about and their place in haunting? Is that most of those things seem absolutely ridiculous until someone challenges it, right? Yep. And then when someone challenges it, then all of a sudden the teller of the story, who may or may not have had an experience, wants you to feel not necessarily the emotion of it. I'm not necessarily the emotion of it, right? Like the fact that it was real to them. So they tell you, well, yeah, and then they change the story slightly so that unbelievable part gets buffed over.
Yep.
Right? And then over the course of that happening time and time again, the ideas of urban legends enter real hauntings and real places that people have seen ghosts. And so you have 23,000 places in the United States that are haunted by ghosts that are very much like Romeo and Juliet. Because that's a story that makes sense to people. And so any two ghosts that are near each other have to have, died in some kind of romantic, not supposed to be together kind of way.
Wow, that's crazy. The fact that I'm still also stuck on the Jeepers Creepers director as a convicted sex offender thing. That's mind blowing to me itself.
Well, what other movies did he make?
Yeah, right. I know.
There were so many bugs. So first of all, it's based on a true story.
Really?
So obviously not the like replacing your body parts with other people.
Yeah.
But in 1990, there was a guy by the name of Dennis DeHume, I think, or Dennis DeFew, and this was up in Michigan, and he was a wife abuser. And on Easter morning, as his kids were opening up their Easter baskets, he beat his wife, dragged her out of the house, killed her, and dumped her body in a well near a church. And a couple was driving by and saw it and stopped. And of course, no cell phones. It's 1990, and so they took off. And he followed them, just like in Jeepers Creepers. Like it became the inspiration for the opening of that movie. And then eventually he gets caught because years later he's on America's Most Wanted, or no, Unsolved Mysteries.
Yep.
And they're like, that dude's right over there. He's living, right there. And so the cops converge. He kills himself. Blah blah blah. And so I do this as part of a presentation that I do to libraries. It's art imitating life, which then imitates art, which is then imitating life. It feeds itself. And underneath that, you have people have had crazy experiences on that stretch of road. Like you can't deny that something weird is going on that stretch of road, but the stories about what it is dramatically have changed in the last 10 years.
Oh, right. Now, could you say the same about, so a place like Bridgewater Triangle, I know, like, locations like, say, let's just take the Hockomock Swamp, just because that's fresh in my brain, was once dubbed by the Wampanoag, the Native American tribe that occupied this area for thousands of years before we did, as a place, Hockomock is a place where spirits dwell? Is that what it?
Yeah, the translation depends on what you're trying to sell. Yeah.
But I mean,
it's either the place where spirits dwell, the place where spirits dwell, the place of evil spirits. Like the translation itself even changed.
I toss evil out because it's whatever. But I mean, it was always known as a haunted location by people that were here before us, and now it is since oh my God, regenerated itself so many times. You get Bigfoot, you get different cryptids, you get UFO sightings, you got a lot of ghost activity. What can you tell me about the Bridgewater Triangle? Has any of this stuff? Is it the same thing? Has it re-evolved itself over the years? Or
so here's the interesting part of it is that the Hockomock, if we just translate it, the earliest translations I heard about it as I started to realize that I was playing in this playground of the Bridgewater Triangle without knowing it, is place where spirits dwell, right? And yet the Hockomock is probably the least haunted place in all of the Bridgewater Triangle. Like,
Really?
it is primarily a cryptid UFO location, right?
Okay.
Now, here's what I've learned in my years and studying, but also befriending. Cryptid people and UFO people don't give in to urban legends and change nearly as easy as us ghost people, right?
Okay.
So if you talk to, for example, Chris Pittman, who is the cryptid and UFO ninja of the Bridgewater Triangle, they call us Chris and Chris, and oddly enough, we worked together and didn't realize that each of us was doing the same stuff, right? His stories haven't changed. 20 years, his stories haven't changed, right? Like, it's,
right.
And I don't know if that's because there's a pseudoscience of investigating ghosts, right? But there's a genuine pattern in how to look into cryptids. And there's an extensive reporting service for UFO encounters, right? And so I think that those things get solid much faster.
Okay.
And so the Hockomock, for example, not nearly as many ghost sightings there, right? But you take a place like Taunton State Hospital.
Oh, yeah.
I have seen, now, when I originally started looking into the Taunton State Hospital, it's because I was a teacher. Once again, this is pre me even knowing anything about the Bridgewater Triangle. I was a teacher in a jail, like a step-down program.
Yep.
And I would say roughly a third of my students over the course of 6 years working here and teaching in this school had at one time or another served time at Taunton State Hospital, which went from, a mental health facility to a juvenile detention facility, right?
Yep. What
they call secure lockup. All right. Yep. I was minimum security. They would come out of there and they would spend whatever time there. And kids would report to me all the time when they knew that I was into this stuff as they, outside, as normies call it. And they would report how many times they would be sleeping and they would wake up and they would say, and this is how they would describe it. Venom was, and a lot of them used the same word. They said venom. Venom was standing in the corner staring at me.
Oh, wow.
Right? What do they know about ghosts? But they know Spider-Man, right? Venom, right?
That black figure. Yeah.
The black figure was and this is over the course of 6 years, kids who didn't know each other. And I also want to stress, because you can easily say, well, they're criminals, they're not reliable. These are kids who were, maybe convicted of a drug charge, but these were rapists. These were people who were in for assault. Like, these were hardcore kids, right? It's not like they got detention and then went to jail. Like, no, they deserved to be in jail. They did really, really graphic, violent things. Yes. And they were tough, right? Gang members, things like that. And they would all say no one liked to go into the basement, right? Like, people would actually, rather than go into the basement, they would lose their privileges for a week, right?
Wow.
Or they would have to go into like a solitary, like isolation kind of situation because they wouldn't go downstairs and get stuff. And then I would say, why is that? And they would explain it. Well, then the next reports that I got from it started to be about time slips. Wow. And people would go into the basement, people who worked there. So not the kids now, but people who worked there would go into the basement and they would see like this bizarre ritual going on that they couldn't explain. And then 10 seconds later, they'd be snapped out of it. And they just have this feeling like they needed to leave.
Right.
Reports like that. And so then I started reporting that stuff, right? Like writing it on my website and stuff like that. And then all of a sudden, the classic insane asylum urban legends started to swarm around it. No, what they used to do is take the prisoners or take the worst of the mental health people. They brought them down into the basement and they had satanic rituals with them. And if you look, there's still the writing on the see, my dog is going crazy. Calm down, Damien. Just kidding. Do you know what I'm saying? So So once again, people were having experiences, and then classic urban legends found their way into these ghost stories.
Of course.
And now it's impossible to separate, because now it's apartment buildings, or it's, and so like many things across Massachusetts, I say the original Green State, because they recycled every haunted place and just made it something new, right? And so you have this influence of urban legends and things like that on the ghosts, even in the Bridgewater Triangle.
Yeah, I almost took a job at Taunton State Hospital. I turned it down because I was going to be put on the bottom of the union totem pole. I didn't want to like have just Wednesdays off. I had a pretty sweet gig going on at the Bridgewater State Hospital. I did work there for 7 years. While there, I had 2 experiences. One was I worked on the Max unit at Bridgewater State Hospital. Now, other people experienced things on other units and told me ghost stories all the time about like this dark figure that they saw on the Max 2 unit. On the Max 1 unit, I remember clear as day. I was standing there. It was Memorial Day weekend, about 6 years ago. I was the milieu lead on the unit, so I was the first one there. I was standing at the intersection of the residential hallways. It used to be very loud in the morning. It was like guys would be yelling for meds. Guys would be yelling because they were psychotic. Guys would be yelling because they wanted to aggravate the guy across the hall from them. Guys were yelling because they wanted food, everything and anything you could imagine. But at that particular moment of the day, on that particular day, there was not a single soul was yelling. It was dead silent, which was nice and peaceful. So I took in that moment of peace, and I was standing right at the intersection of the dorm, right when you come into the unit. It's the cross section. I'm just like taking a deep breath, and I'm like appreciating the silence, and I hear right in my right ear, buddy. Like I turn around, I look behind me. There was nobody there. At this point, I've been investigating for a while. I've experienced this kind of thing before. While yes, it was creepy as hell. Yeah, I don't.
It's and as someone who is, I mean, a lot. If you didn't graduate my program by your 21st birthday, you either went to Worcester or you went to Bridgewater. And that was the greatest motivation for our students. It's like, because it's like, you go to Bridgewater, you might never come back. Like,
right, it's a
you're definitely incarcerated there. It's not like you get a term, right?
It's not a hospital. Don't let the term hospital fool you. It is completely a jail, and they completely. No, actually, there's some good recovery programs, but I mean, it's like not
right. It's one of those things.
You're not recovering here. No,
as opposed to what I'm trying to do, which is trying to get as much help as I can for you before your 21st birthday. That's we're incarcerating you and maybe healing you along the way. But you know that silence is the weird part, right? Like that silence is the uncomfortable part, because the last thing you want in a lockup or a mental health facility like that is quiet.
Yeah, right.
Because that's the quiet before the storm, right?
Especially when you're expecting it like 364 days of the year. It's like loud and chaotic, and like guys are like.
So it's like it's just like having kids. Well, wait a minute, why don't I hear the kids? What are they doing?
Right. What are they up to? Right. Ooh. Yeah. But no, Bridgewater was interesting. But like not even like atrocities that happened in Bridgewater. I only had 2 experiences. I worked at a group home in Woonsocket, Rhode Island, and I had like every paranormal experience you could possibly imagine, from seeing something to hearing the phantom footsteps, to hearing voices, to being touched. I had my shirt tugged, to toys going off, to everything. But this is when this started. Like the kids would talk about things. I'm like, oh yeah, you take it with a grain of salt. They're children. Then staff would tell me things. I'm like, you're letting your minds play into it. And then I started experiencing things for real. And when it got real, I was like a complete skeptic before, and then I was a complete believer. And I'm like, I got to do this more.
Yeah, and you know that's one of the things that like as an investigator, I was always unsettled about was no, like let me judge whether something is valid or not, and then I'll put it out there for you, and you can judge whether it's valid or not. But there was such a discrediting of firsthand accounts that it was like, well, that didn't happen. Like, come on, man. Like, the only witness you have is a person. Like, there's no evidence, there's no anything like that. I'm like, that's easy to say, but you can't tell that person that they're not experiencing that because you didn't find it on that day. So, you know, it honestly became, as an investigator, I was investigating the people who were reporting things to me as much as I was the stuff itself, right?
Oh, you got to.
Because you're looking for, are they valid? Like, if you back in the day, I remember going to this one house, which is now pretty notoriously haunted, the Sam West house in Acushnet, and I'm sorry, a Sonnet, and Acushnet, sorry, which is Freetown. If you're not from there, it's Freetown, whatever. You can, and I'm there the first time, and I'm talking to the couple that are living there, and I look, and in the bookcase, I see not only every DVD, the DVDs of every season of Ghost Hunters, but then also like an entire, right? And I'm seeing like books by every paranormal writer that I like, and I'm like, okay, these people want ghosts a little too much. Now, ended up the place was ridiculously haunted. It's in the Ghosts of Bridgewater Triangle book, but that's the kind of thing that I was always looking at. Is like, okay, do these people really want this to happen? Right? Are they trying to just become involved in it? And so, and that's Jeff Belanger and I have this debate all the time, or used to have this debate all the time, which was his idea was you put the first name and last name of every person you talk to in the book, because that builds your credibility. And then I was, for the longest time, a fan of the Charles Robinson. And if you haven't read New England Ghost Files, you totally need to.
Okay.
Charles Robinson school of thought, which was, no, you don't put their name at all, and therefore they have nothing to gain from telling you their story. And now I kind of go back and forth. I don't know which is necessarily the best way to go about it, except the fact that my first, my Bridgewater Triangle books, all those names are made up.
Yep.
And now it's pretty much like all the names are the actual people. So, I kind of go back and forth on which is the better way to handle that.
You were talking about earlier some of your really your prolific experiences that you've had in Florida in exploring the paranormal down there.
Yeah.
And you don't even bring anything; you just bring yourself. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Well, like of my approach or like an experience?
Yeah, an approach, a little bit of both. What do you do when you go in, and then what have you experienced?
I'm with you. The first thing you learn in Florida is never bet on the Dolphins.
Sure. Oh, they kill me.
So the approach is that, and the show was originally, my original co-host was, she was empathic. Who had a love of the paranormal, but no vocabulary. You know what I'm saying? Like no understanding of like the bigger concepts. And so the show basically was me presenting, here's a haunted legend in Florida, and her asking all the questions an audience member would ask, and then us going out together. And what we would do is, because not for evidence, but for experience, we videotape everything and we audio record everything for the podcast and for social media and stuff. And that's the extent. That's we don't bring any kind of equipment. I had a host, another host that did it for a few years with me, and she was big into divining rods because she just liked, there was just something about her, right? And so she really was into that. She was also, as a kindergarten teacher, she wanted to do more children ghosts.
Yeah.
Whereas my first host was like, nope, not doing it, and so she didn't want children, right? It's actually one of the reasons why she left doing the show, was it was coming into her life and her children. Right. And so she loves to read. If there's anything that involves a kid, we would go and read. So one of the most interesting experiences that we had was there's this haunting in a place called Oak Ridge Cemetery. This is a great example of one of the very first legend trips I did in Florida, because there's a ghost there's a statue. It's a talking Mary statue that you can ask romantic advice to. And when you turn your back to it, it starts to whisper in your ears like the answers to your question and talk to you, right? In addition to that, there is, and I'm blown by this stuff really fast. I could do 2 hours just on this part of Oak Ridge. There's another part where there's a Royal Air Force memorial, because in Arcadia, Florida, which is where this is, this is where the Royal Air Force, the British pilots, trained during World War II. Right? Because you can't train in England where you're being bombed. And so they came over to Florida and they trained, which a lot of people don't know that history, right? So
did not know that.
That involved doing a lot of research into the history of the Royal Air Force in Florida, and people go, really? Like, I never knew that. In Arcadia, people didn't know that, right? Wow. It's like there's literally and so 21 pilots who died in accidents and things like that are buried there. And then their instructor is also buried there. So there's 22 people there. And there's some really interesting, you were talking about a bubble of nothingness. You walk into that memorial and it's like you're in a time capsule, right? There's no sound. Wow. You can't hear anything. It's almost like you're in another dimension where this cemetery is. And then the odd part about it is when you walk through the cemetery, when you look back on the memorial, there's a Union Jack hanging. Sometimes it's hanging, and then 5 minutes later it'll disappear, and then 10 minutes later it'll come back, and then 20 minutes later it'll be half mast, and then another 5 minutes it'll disappear. So this flag disappears.
Wow, an actual flag?
Yeah, like a Union Jack, double flagpole, everything like that. Wow. And it's crazy because when we went there, the first time we went there, you could hear when you walked next to it, you could hear the chain or the rope clanging against the flagpole. Clang, clang, clang.
Yeah.
We went there and we started to read. I can't believe I'm English teacher. I'm forgetting the name of this. The poem about the fields in Flanders Fields, right? In Flanders Fields.
Yep.
As soon as we started to do that, and you can actually watch the video, there's no sound. That clanging stops. There's no birds anymore. Like, it's like we're in this isolated little pod. You're not even hearing the noise of the flag anymore.
Jesus.
But in the back of the cemetery, there are the graves of 7 children who were murdered by their babysitter.
Oh.
So
same babysitter? Yeah.
Same babysitter, yeah. And all the same day.
Oh, wow.
So there was this man, there was these children, the Richardson children, and they were all poisoned. And their father was accused of the crime and convicted and sent to jail and served like 20 years in jail, even though the babysitter had them that day. And the babysitter was on parole because the babysitter had killed her husband by poisoning him.
Oh.
And so it was this real travesty of justice, right? And so he finally gets out of jail, right? But these children are all buried there, right? And there's the varying ages. And, no one thought that he actually did it, but it was just, welcome to Florida's justice system.
Oh, God.
And those kids, the first reports that we ever got were those kids come up as orbs you can see with your eye, right?
Yep.
And they dance with each other. They play with each other. And so we're like, okay, we got to do that, right? We got to go and see if we can play with some ghost kids.
Right.
And then the second part of it is they'll play hide and seek. And so we went there, or you're supposed to close your eyes and you count to 10 and you say, ready or not, here I come. And you literally will see orbs fly away from one central place. Wow. You'll start to see this this kind of like scattering in the area. You'll see this kind of like figure hiding behind headstones. Like they're playing hide and seek. And then you're supposed to say, now it's your turn. And then you count to 10 and you go hide. And so it was crazy because, and here's an evidence thing. So I went out there with my friend who was an investigator who was like, I want to do the investigative side of you following up on the legend. I'm like, okay. And he had one of those, he had a Connects, right?
Yeah.
And it was crazy that when I told him to scatter, you literally saw like one figure in the middle kind of doing that whoop thing it does. And then all of a sudden you saw a whole bunch of them crawl away like this, like almost like spiders. It was really cool.
Wow.
But the better part for me was I did the hiding part, and I went to this one place under a tree that I always hide, and I'm there, and I have my eyes closed. You're supposed to close your eyes, even though you're the one hiding, and pulling on my arm like this, pulling on it like this, and it was crazy, right? Like, and it's there, it's right there, and you go, and the weird thing is that it wasn't scary at all. It was amusing, right? It was touching almost. These kids
Right.
who all died the same day, they all died together essentially. They found each other, and they might not be at peace, but they're together.
Well, it's if they're playing hide and go seek with local ghost hunters, I'd really be willing to think they're more at peace than like harassing people and screaming, "Oh my God, help me, help me!"
Yeah. It's
and all the awful things that could be happening. So
it's interesting because on so many levels. Not there are a lot of investigators that go, but it's a local legend. So the locals are the ones who are not. They're the normal people in the town who say, "Go knock on the haunted house 3 times." They're not people who are going there in a sophisticated way. They're doing exactly what I did, which is just go through the motions of this. But you always hear this idea of like ghosts aren't in cemeteries, and I always love paranormal proclamations like ghosts don't do this or ghosts do this.
How do you know or how do you don't know? You don't know anything, right?
And so they're where they died. They're not like where they, and yet these kids, this is the one place where they are all together, right? Like their bodies are all together here. They died, one died in the hospital, one died in the house, one died in this is the unified, this is the common ground place. And so, it's profound and entertaining at the same time. So,
absolutely.
But always with respect. And whenever I come, I always bring all my kids' leftover toys, which they hate, but I give the kids toys to play with. So.
That's kind of cool. I've heard some investigators and some. Next week we got a demonologist on. I've heard other demonologists talk about how child spirits are just demons trying to trick us, and that's how they trick us. Now, I've had interactions with child spirits before. I've heard them with my own ears. I've recorded children's voices. I personally don't believe that they're all demons. What are your thoughts on this? Because it seems like a hot topic.
Yeah, once again, I think this is a wide proclamation, right? Like, okay, you're saying every ghost of a kid is, and I have a paranoid mindset myself, and so which is why the odd thing is I rarely in 30 years I've rarely had stuff that happens in my house. And I've rarely like brought anything home or anything like this. So it's, but I remember there was a time when I was very clearly getting that my grandfather wanted to talk to me. And I was getting all of these signs to it, and I would kind of see something out of the corner of my eye. And I refused because I'm like, if I was going to mess with me, I would use my grandfather, the face of my grandfather. And so, that was my kind of paranoia with it. And he's probably really pissed, right? And that's why, I can't grow anything because he had a real green thumb. But I think, once again, it's really hard to say all ghosts are everything. You know what I'm saying? Like, all things are this.
Because in that same sense, you could just say that every ghost that we even experience is something demonic, and it's 100% demonic. And hey, I don't even like to say the D word that much because I don't really, I don't subscribe that much to the religious card. But I don't like to mix the two either. I don't know.
I think what it boils down to is don't trust kids. Right. So as a teacher, I can fully embrace that.
Yep. I think it's just like the sensationalization with the movies and with the horror and with the places like the Conjuring House and not to say the Conjuring House is awful. It's a great institution here in Rhode Island, but like movies have just made everyone want to see your head spin and like projectile vomit 12
right. And I think the Sally House has done a lot to promote that children are demons thing, because that was the circumstance with that case. And then you have a similar thing with the A word that I don't say because it's cursed in my world, where it was, the pig, Betsy the pig. It was Betsy the pig who was Do you know the case I'm talking about that I don't have to say? In New
I'm
York?
not sure.
In New York, with an A. Don't
Oh,
say that.
yeah,
Yeah.
I know what you're
Yeah.
talking about.
It was Betty the Pig or Betsy the Pig, who
Mhm.
once again was pretending to be a pig child to engage the child. And that from our perspective, it's like, once that loss of innocence, from a folklore sense, like that loss of innocence, a big thing. And so,
Okay.
I would never allow a demon in, and I would never allow, but a child doesn't know any better, and they could be easily fooled. And that's why, and it also pulls at our heartstrings and things like that. So
Right.
I think it's easy to make that leap, that if you're looking at a narrative as opposed to like what actually is going on.
Right.
That
I mean, it
children
makes
are-
sense. It makes sense in a cemetery where you're at, where children are buried because they were murdered together, but like at a place like, say, all right, I've investigated the USS Salem. Dante Cristofaro, lovely guy. Love what they do on the Salem. The Salem's a beautiful ship. I don't know. Have you ever been on the Salem?
No.
No. It's a
Yeah.
lovely ship. It's Quincy. I think it's out in Quincy. It's docked there, and it was once a flagship of the U.S.
Oh
fleet.
yeah.
There's a child spirit that lingers. Now, I've caught recordings of a child's voice in this room, in the anchorless room, which is where the anchor chain is stored and the anchor is dropped from. And there's thought that this child could be a D word, because what would the ghost of a little child be doing on a U.S. Navy vessel? So I think maybe, but I mean, there's nothing to. I don't know what they would have to do to prove it either. I don't want to like dare a demonic.
How do you prove that even, right? Like, yeah, and what would that be doing? What would the D word be doing in the anchor room as well? Like, was there,
Right.
we can tend to make sense of this stuff because past things have happened, and I don't discredit any idea into. I think it's more comfortable to take the connotation out and call them elementals, or something like that instead. And I think that those things exist in the world.
Okay.
I think that I don't know. I think that, like I said, it's too big of a proclamation to say all or many, or I think sure some are, because I think that's very seductive. But I've encountered what I feel are children's ghosts that I don't feel had that, and then I've experienced, like I said, like my grandfather. It was very much like this is something not good trying to get in, and not
right.
my
If someone was going to trick me, this is how they would do it.
Yeah.
So more of your ghost stories. What do you got from Massachusetts? Anything hauntingly scary from Massachusetts? Of course, you must have something from
it's interesting. Like, I had a lot less experiences in my 20 years doing it up there or whatever, as opposed to the 15 years here. I don't know have you watched the video when Pukwudgies attack?
I have not.
So you're gonna have to look into that. Do you know what a Pukwudgie is? Have we talked about that?
It's like a cryptid that lives in the Bridgewater Triangle area, and it's like a dog-like. I'm not. I don't.
Yeah. No. See. Okay. So that's really interesting. Like, not to switch the topic, but like.
Oh, please.
So I started researching that about the time I started writing Dark Woods, my first book about the Bridgewater Triangle, and people were writing to me saying, "I'm having these experiences. I experienced a small little like creature in the woods."
Yeah.
And it looks like just like a little troll or a little munchkin or a little, some people said it looked like a cross between a Native American and a leprechaun, right? Like, they would describe it like that, like very humanoid looking.
Yeah, I got a picture I'm going to bring up in a second.
And then they would see it in the woods and it would disappear. Looks nothing like that whatsoever.
That's what Google gave me when I
looked up. No, I'm getting to that story, right?
Okay, good.
And so there was so I'm like, okay, and I got like several reports of this, right? Like, it wasn't just one, and they were all in the Bridgewater, they were all in the Freetown area. They were all in the same town.
Yep.
And so the kicker was they would see this thing 3 days later or a few days later in their house. And it would seem to be telling them psychically, and then also kind of contextually, like, I know where you live. Don't come back to where I live.
Mm-hmm.
And they were so freaked out by this that separately all these people were contacting me, right?
Yep.
And so I had no idea what it was. And I'm like, I don't know, sounds like, to me, it sounds like a fairy. It sounds like, those kinds of things. Sounds like a troll. And I got another report in Framingham, much more like what they actually look like, right there.
Okay. So they got pants, or is that fur?
Those are pants. Like half the people who I've interviewed have heard, saw them wearing pants. The other half said that the belly was hanging down far enough that they couldn't see whether they were wearing anything.
Oh, okay.
But that picture right there that you're seeing was my first physical exposure to it, right? So I was reading Joe Citro. I don't know if you've had Joe Citro on or if you know him.
I don't, but
Vermont ninja of ghost stories and cryptids, just amazing. And I was reading his book, Passing Strange, and he was talking about the Dover Demon.
Okay, I've heard of that.
Right. And he said, like, just kind of threw out there, like, as if everyone knew. He just threw out, it's almost assuredly, the line is something like this. Almost definitely the Dover Demon is not a Pukwudgie. I'm like, what the hell is that? Right. And so I Google it. And at the time, the only responses on the internet were references to that picture that you just had up, which comes from a book called The Good Giant and the Bad Pukwudgies. So I'm a librarian at that time. I call and get the book, right? I buy the book. I then go to the back. I go in the back of the book. It says these stories in this are based on writings from this book called The Narrow Land. I get The Narrow Land, right? I then go to the back of The Narrow Land, and I literally, because I'm a librarian, I get every book, every article, and I start researching this Pukwudgie and finding out it has this deep lore in New England, right? Yep. And it's these little creatures that go throughout the woods, and they've got these ghost lights that they call Tai-Pai-Wunkas, which are the souls of Wampanoags they've killed. Then they use it to lure people into the woods, and they can change shapes of other animals. And they, and that they were, they've gone back and forth between being friendly and not friendly, and then murderous, and then all this stuff, like going back literally 400 or 500 years of all this research, about these stories and their place in Wampanoag. And then so I started publishing this, and all of a sudden now Pukwudgies are a big thing, right? Like people know about them. And now, so show the first picture.
Yep.
That's what the hell is that?
That's horrifying.
First of all, that looks like it's about 7 feet tall.
Yep.
It doesn't look like it's humanoid. It looks like an ogre of some kind. And it's really interesting because when I first started researching this, there was like these random sightings, but now people experience it all the time. And they've become vicious and monstrous, and they have long nail and sharp teeth and like are these wild things. And the first ones that I got were people having this little gremlin. I shouldn't even take gremlin. Leprechaun is a better thing. This little leprechaun appearing in their bedroom at night, basically freaking them out to not go into the woods. Which has nothing to do with. So I always say, if you ever watched that show Paranormal State, back in the day, so I was on Paranormal State because they were doing an episode where they thought it was a Pukwudgie, and so they called me up and they wanted to bring, and I'm like, oh, I don't live in New England anymore. I'm down here now, and so they're like, well, we'll interview you, and then we'll play it over like we'll pretend you're like on the speaker box. And so at the end of the episode, they're interviewing me, and there's a part in the lore of Pukwudgies that says that they stole Mashop, who's like their creator god. They stole his bread, right? They stole this strawberry bread that he had. And his wife was like, you need to go get the Pukwudgies. And he's like, I'm too busy smoking. And they're like, do you know he stole your bread? And they're like, oh, no, I'm going to go get them. Like that was his inspiration because they loved it. So I'm on this show, And they say to me, because this person is being attacked by a Pukwudgie, which once again is not anything having to do with their lore. And so they're like, okay, well, how do you get rid of a Pukwudgie? And I'm like, it's an elemental. Like, it's not a cryptid. It's not a ghost. It's something in between. Like, the way to get rid of it is to ignore it. Like, and it goes away, right? Like, usually you've trespassed on something. And they're like, well, how about if you plant a strawberry bush? And I'm like, plant a strawberry bush. Well, I don't know how that would hit. And I go on for a little bit about, that doesn't make any sense. Why would you plant something someone likes if you want to get rid of them? Like, da, da, da. And so, but, a lot of it has to do with intent and making peace. So yeah, you can maybe you could plant a strawberry bush. Sure. So when the episode airs, they edit all of that out. And the question goes, how do you get rid of a Pukwudgie? And then my voice saying, yeah, plant a strawberry bush.
Oh.
Almost immediately, 500 years of lore totally shifts. And now everything in association with Pukwudgie says, if you are attacked by a Pukwudgie, grab strawberries and da-da-da-da-da. Like, and I was like, wow. Like, I didn't mean to say that.
And then they credit you with it, and you forever look like the asshole. I don't get credit
for any of this. That's the funniest part, is that it's gotten so much bigger than me. And so, it's even though some people still call me the Pukwudgie guy, they're definitely like, I am not part of that lore, even though I helped to bring it back out. And so I really like that idea, because I have seen it like it's part of the Harry Potter universe now. Right? I mean, when the first witch came to America in the Harry Potter world, it was, she was helped by William the Pukwudgie. And so in the American version of Hogwarts, one of the houses is Pukwudgie.
Wow.
Yeah. Huh. So it doesn't get me any faster through the line at Harry Potter world, by the way, to have helped in that way. But there you go.
That's too bad. Yeah.
I don't even get free butterbeer.
Oh, and you're down in Florida. You would think you'd get some kind of discount, maybe.
Right.
Free rides and something at the Harry Potter world.
She's the richest woman in England. She can't get me some, like, one of those free wands that moves things in the, in the displays.
That'd be cool. Yeah, that'd be cool. So you're talking about the Dover Demon. That's is that this? This is the Dover Demon.
Yeah, that's the Dover Demon.
And in comparison to the Pukwudgie, I don't think it looks more alien-like. Honestly.
So, I think part of it was that they were, a lot of the initial reports of Pukwudgies had that kind of, which is funny now because they say covered in hair, which was never really a thing.
Just kind of had a long man fro, if anything.
Exactly. And the funny thing is that hair right there has now become porcupine spikes in a lot of the pictures.
Of course it has.
And a lot of the lore. And I think it was just. I think it was Joe Citro checking off the boxes of what the Dover Demon wasn't. Because if you notice, the skin color is the same and the smoothness is the same. Yeah. And so I think it was one of those things where he was trying to, obviously you would never mistake those two.
No.
And then the other part of that is that the Dover Demon doesn't act anything like a Pukwudgie. And even though, Pukwudgies are not a phenomenon that's just found in the Bridgewater Triangle, the Freetown State Forest, or even New England. They're obviously in the lore of pretty much every culture in the world. They just call them different things. And so,
all right. So the Dover Demon is essentially a Pukwudgie, but it's just a different name, or is it a different entity?
Ooh, good question. Right. I did a lot of, especially towards the 20th anniversary a while back, we did a whole show on Spooky South Coast, and it was me and Lauren Coleman and Jeff Belanger, and we had like a round table about it. And oddly enough, as a teacher, I used to teach from a book that had a whole chapter on all the details of the Dover Demon. You know what? I think there's not enough information to say and it's not frequent enough, right? And so one of the things that I've learned is that things that are more towards the cryptid side of things generally tend to happen more than once, right? Like you never hear of like one Bigfoot sighting. It's always the area has, even if it's a flap, right? Like the area has several sightings or UFOs and so the Dover Demon to me really feels like it was some kind of misidentification. I don't think it was what was it, moose. I don't think it was baby moose. But I think I generally tend to lean towards either a misidentification of something or more alien.
Yeah. Okay.
Because those
it does look like an alien, but I mean,
yeah, it does. But it is a case that it's a lot of literature for like what amounts to 40 minutes of sightings. But I guess initially Mothman was that way too. It was just several sightings over a few nights before it kind of picked up the.
Now, Mothman is specific to like your region of the country, or
Mothman is in West Virginia.
West Virginia. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Now is it every region of the United States has its own cryptid, has its own mythological being?
Yeah, I mean, it's. I think some are variations of each other.
Yeah.
So, for example, if you've seen Hellier, and they have the Kentucky Demon or the Kentucky, I think those are more Pukwudgie-ish than other things. What do you call them? Tommyknockers, to me, sound exactly like a cave version of a Pukwudgie. So I think some of these are. So when I went to Indiana, I took a trip to Indiana because it was one of the other main sightings or main places for Pukwudgies, right? And so when I went there happened to me this anthropologist, this doctorate, who was at the state park I was at. She's happened to be spending a week there doing research, and what she essentially said was that Indiana, which is known as the Crossroads of America, was a meeting place for a lot of different tribes, and they didn't have a common language. And so the word Pukwudgie, which came from the New England area, everyone had the same kind of experiences. And so Pukwudgie became this umbrella term that different tribes took on to describe little people that mess with us in the woods, right? Wow. And so you have all of these different tribes that then go to their own parts of the country and use the word Pukwudgie from the meeting that they would have in that area. And the term originally was you might say monster, you might say dog, and then all of a sudden you have all these different breeds of dogs. Right. And so I think that there's a lot of different variations. I mean, the first Pukwudgies that I heard about that I then retroactively were able to look and be like, oh, those were Pukwudgies, they're supposed to look like Grover. No, I shouldn't say Grover, because if you know Fiona Broom, she described it as Grover on a bad day. And then when I talked to her about it, she was like, yeah, Red. And I'm like, okay, you obviously don't have kids. You mean Elmo. He looks like Elmo. Those were the first ones that I encountered, even before I was getting stories from other people, right? And so that's very different from the one that we saw. But they're both actions, and all the things around them were the same as Pukwudgies. So they are considered Pukwudgies, right?
So all right. So it's great to have these stories, and it's great to have these legends that traverse time and cultures and whatnot. But do we actually have any evidence or any proof of their existence beyond the anecdotal?
No.
It's just pure experience, which is fine by me. I'm all about the experience.
I mean, if you're talking about something like that, every once in a while, someone will send me a picture, and they're like, "Look, I got a picture of Pukwudgie, and there's something small in the woods. Their eyes are glowing, or things like that." No, I don't think there is. The closest I have to evidence was taken from when not by mysterious forces, but by my daughter. I went when I was in Indiana. We had an experience where in this mountain state forest, where it was okay, this is the second home of the Pukwudgies, right? We went there and we were kind of walking on the edge of the woods, which they literally call Pukwudgie Trail, right? This trail that goes to those woods. And we saw something in the woods, clearly hiding. We're watching it, looking at us from behind a tree, whoop, going back and forth like this.
Mm-hmm.
Small, dark. And so we were kind of like, all right. And we're watching it. And as we're watching it, what seemed to be dozens of lightning bugs, right? Which were all now swarming, formed a line like this, like literally a corridor, a pathway to the tree that this thing was looking behind us from. I'm videoing all of this on my secondary phone, right? So the second phone I brought, like not even hooked up to a thing. It's just literally using it for video and audio recording. Yep. And so we follow it down this path. And as we're walking, my partner that I'm with, she looks on the ground and she sees a whole bunch of crab apples. And in Pukwudgie lore in Indiana, Pukwudgies love crab apples. And so she's looking at them because they seem to have one little single mouth bite out of a whole bunch of them, right? Probably rot, but she's like, oh my word, look, we literally had read 20 minutes earlier about and so we separate from each other. And I get to the area where the tree is that the person was looking behind from, and there's nothing there. And I'm videoing with the phone. And then I look to so now I turn around and there's a distance between us and maybe like 20 feet. And I'm saying, hey, it's really weird. Da, da, da. And then all of a sudden a deer appears, a huge deer appears between the two of us.
Wow.
You're quiet, but they're not superheroes, right? Like it's just boom there. And it looks at me and it looks at her and it bolts, right? And it goes 1, 2, like almost like leaps, like hops. And then it leaps to where the road is because we're not far from the road and disappears as it reaches the road.
Oh, wow.
And I got the whole and I'm like, wow, that's crazy. And as we're on our way home, like days later, I'm looking at it going like, dude, like this is crazy. You can clearly see no deer. You can see the leap thing, right?
Yep.
And so this was a trip we went away on. My daughter comes home. It's her old phone. She's like, I want to use it for music, not knowing that there's anything interesting on it. And so she changes the password and promptly forgets it. And so,
oh my God.
So, and I don't think that's a conspiracy theory. Like, I think there are a lot of Bridgewater Triangle things that intentionally evidence has been whisked away somewhere that I don't know. Like clearly
to keep the legend, trying to keep the legend.
I don't think it's like, Black Ops, or I think it's more of like the forest itself and the triangle itself taking things. We took about 7 rolls of film in Rehoboth the very first time I went there. In the glove compartment of the car. By the time we got home, there was no film left. So I think that some places can do that, right? Some places are living and breathing. They can kind of reach out.
That's kind of weird.
It wasn't that. It was just my daughter. My daughter screwed me. So
right. But I mean, it's kind of weird that you say. I've had investigators present evidence or what they believe was evidence, or even if you want to say the E word, and it was there, and we all heard it. I was like, yes, this is good, this is great. And then a couple months go by, and we're ready to like present the evidence to the client, and then they can't find it. They're like, I'm going back, and we're playing the same, and it's just not there anymore. I'm like, did we actually hear that, or are you? Is this...
Right.
But it makes more sense the way you put it. It just, I mean, of course it makes more sense that way. But I mean, it's just weird. It's just weird how that happens sometimes.
You find the same thing with objects that are the focus of hauntings, right? So I have, my book, Haunted Objects, and we're working on kind of like the second. We released the book, so the second edition of it just came out.
Nice.
But we're working on like a second one of it. And one of the things you find time and time again with those stories, because everyone's like, I'll take the doll, bring it into my house, like what you find time and time again with those stories is that like the thing disappears, right? It just goes away, right? You're like, well, where's the coin? You said the coin did it. Where's the coin? Like, I want to picture the damn coin for the book, right? They go, I don't know where it is. And then it's always like, well, wait a minute, where did it go? Right? It's like, well, you approached me with the story. How do you not have a complete story? And it's more of the haunting happens and they want to get the haunting out. And they don't think about like it is a story. And then all of a sudden when you want to follow up on it, they go, I think, did we throw away that Ouija board? Like, whatever happened to that? It's there's almost like an amnesia. And so it's a very similar thing between evidence and haunted objects like that.
Huh, that's just weird powers of the universe, I guess. So tell me a little bit more about your new book, Haunted Objects 2. Is that's what's in the works right now?
Yeah, that's kind of like a little side thing. That's not the primary thing I'm working on, but Haunted Objects we just re-released.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of the most recent. What I'm working on right now is I was years ago. I grabbed hold of a legend of a swamp witch in this small town in Florida.
Mm-hmm.
And we went out and legend tripped it.
Yep.
And in legend tripping that story, like we produced all this, we got this really cool video, found all this information, got a lot of ticks, unfortunately.
Oh yeah.
And then a while later, like a few months later, I got a call and an email almost simultaneously from the same woman, basically saying, like, you're an idiot. Like, you not only do you have the story wrong, you have the location. You're not even in the town you think you're in.
Oh man. And
so for me, no one quite gets my humor. But the reason why it's called Tripping on Legends, the show is called Tripping on Legends, is A, we're legend tripping. But B, I want it to be that where I'm making mistakes. Like, you're exploring the legend with me. So I'm literally tripping on the legend. You know what I'm saying? I'm making mistakes. Right. And so when I get a call or an email from someone telling me I'm an idiot, and it's not one of my parents from school, I love that. And so what she told me was, where you are is not where you think you are. It's a town that has disappeared, not a ghost town, but a town that's disappeared called Pemberton Ferry. And there are people who lived in Pemberton Ferry when they were kids who don't even remember Pemberton Ferry. Like, that's the kind of mass
amnesia,
psychosis, mass forgetting that is involved in this. And what it ends up being is, I'm just trying to tell the story about this swamp witch, but there's so many other stories that are attached to it. I have to keep stopping and saying, like, okay, before I tell you that, let me tell you this. So it's a totally different kind of ghost book because it's 27 ghost stories to tell you about this swamp witch, who's not a swamp witch. Spoilers. Like, it's something totally different. And it involves the Blair Witch, and it involves all this other stuff. And I intentionally, every time I'm working on it, I allow, if my mind goes someplace, I just go where my mind goes, because I wanted to have that feel of, like, what the hell's up with this story? Is this Pemberton Ferry like the nexus of the universe? Because every haunting in that area seems to be focused on this place that no one knows exists. Like, literally, people who live there don't know the town ever existed.
Wow, that's weird.
Yeah.
All right. Big welcome to the goat. Can you hear us, goat? Are you there?
Yeah. I'm sorry for being late, guys. Had a little issue.
No, not a big deal. No Shit happens, man.
Yeah,
we're from Massachusetts. We get it.
Goat, how's everything going?
It's going good. As you trot into the studio, do you have any questions for our host, Chris Balzano?
No, you're the host. I'm the guest.
Oh, I'm the yeah. You know what I meant.
Buddy Zero, Technology 8.
Oh, completely, dude. Oh, COVID.
I don't know what was said and not said. I heard you briefly talking about your next book that you have coming up.
Yeah.
Is that what it is? And you've written 2 books before?
No,
12
books. 12.
12?
Yeah, 12. Yeah. My 12th is about to come out next month. Yeah,
you're a little bit late, Brendan.
Oh,
yeah,
that's all right. I've got two about.
So we're building up.
I've got 2 about the triangle. That's probably what you're thinking.
That is, yeah. So you have 2 about the triangle,
or you could say I only have 2 that are good. Like, so there you go. That's.
I wouldn't ever do that.
One or the other. So.
Come on, man. That's harsh. Ugh.
I would never make that claim at all, especially for somebody who's written 12 books. That's 12 more than I've written.
Yeah, I
Maybe
cheat
12
though
more than I've read.
because one of my books, they made a Barnes and Noble special cheap edition of it. So I count that as twice. I count that as 2 books. And then the Haunted Objects, we just made like volume 2 from it. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, or
That's
second
cool.
edition, I should say. So it's the same book. All I did was change things around and stuff. And so that's 2. So it's really 10 with 2 that are duplicates.
That's fair.
So I don't know how much you guys have talked about the Haunted Objects book.
We haven't. So why don't you talk about it?
So what are you covering in that book?
It's really cool because one of the things that I say, I did write a new intro to the book. And one of the things I say is that it was a book that failed. When we originally published it, it didn't do very well. And I think it was a book that, I don't want to sound like, it's not in a braggy way. I think it was ahead of its time, or it was in the wrong time period, right? Because it was published like 10 years ago. And back then, folklore had its folklore, like urban legends had their, like that, and real true ghost stories had another shelf, right? Like, and the two didn't like each other, right? We were in a world where, ghost hunters and ghost adventures and shows about investigating were like the dominant force in the paranormal and a driving force for what people wanted. They didn't want to hear a story about an urban legend, right? They wanted to hear a story that had evidence, that it was backed up, that you could prove. And so Haunted Objects does both. So folklorists didn't like it because they wanted to hear just the famous cases, and ghost people didn't like it because it's like, why are you talking about, James Dean's car, right? Like that we can't investigate that. There's no evidence of that. And so I think now the climate has changed, and everywhere I would because it's out of print, right? It went to remainder because it basically bombed. And so the only copies that were out there were on Amazon. And so I would buy a used copy for like $2, and then people would hand me $20 for it at an event. Hey, can I buy that book? Can I buy that book? And I'd be like, all right, you take it. And so we made a new edition of it. And it's interesting because people love the idea. And once they get past like, oh, you mean like haunted dolls? And I'm like, yeah. And then another 40 chapters, they really kind of see this I like it because it freaks people out, because they say, I go to yard sales all the time. Are you telling me I'm bringing something haunted or cursed into my house? And I go, yeah, 100%. So I wish there was a how to get rid of them section at the back, so it was a manual for them. But no, they bring it in like, pay full price for stuff. Buy it at Walmart. There's nothing haunted in Walmart.
So
First of all,
when we talk,
I love the yard sales. So
no, I'm with you too. I'm totally messing.
Go ahead, buddy.
When we talk haunted attachments, Chris, we're talking like attached to objects, like an old ring or necklace, or like attachments that can follow you home and be your new best friend.
Yeah, it's interesting. Originally, we said no cursed objects. In retrospect, when I'm looking back, I think some of these objects were more cursed than haunted. But some of the things that are in there are, for example, a ring, right? Or I should say a necklace. And the necklace was not haunted. It was just the focus of the haunting. So the ghost, and what it was a woman who had been given the necklace by her father, who passed away. She then gives it to her son, who passes away really early. I think he was like 2 or 3 years old. And every time she feels the need to communicate with one of them, the necklace shows up. Or she'll be at her son's grave and the necklace will be there. And she takes it home and she loses it. And then a year later, it'll be at her father's grave.
Jesus Christmas.
So it's one of those things where both of them are trying to communicate. Other ones are more of like, yeah, like this was there when they died. And somehow the ghost is attached to it. And other times it's just, I have one where there's Uncle Webb's Tools, where the guy, he dies and he passes his tools down to his son, and his son hates the father, right? And so he says to his cousin, you take the tools, man. Like, you use them. And then the tools find their way all around the house, right? They disappear, they appear. He comes in one time. They're all in a circle in his living room. And at the same time, the radio keeps playing songs like out of nowhere. It'll just turn on and it'll be a Beatles song. And his father, because uncle was obsessed with the Beatles, and he's like, you know what? Here you go, cousin. Have the tools back, and the haunting stops.
Wow.
Right? The dude just wanted to have the tools passed to his son, and it was his way of kind of making amends and being like, let's bury the hatchet or bury the hammer, right?
That's
and
awesome.
And so it kind of runs the spectrum of some of them are cursed seeming, some of them are the focus of it, some of them are, it's the object itself that has to, like you were saying, trap the energy.
That's awesome. Those are like those that get the stories. I don't know. They pull up my heartstrings. It's like they hold on to that emotion, the spirits after they pass on. That's just
it's hilarious. Like the inspiration for the book, for us was I was asked to kind of write the book, and I was rolling around in my head like, is this a legitimate thing? And I'm not even kidding you. We were watching my son and I were watching Boomerang, and the episode of G.I. Joe called the Phantom Brigade comes on.
Yeah.
And if you've ever seen that episode, Cobra uses 3 objects that these ghosts are attached to control them to attack the Joes, right? Like it's like a Centurion, it's an American pilot, and I think like an Amazonian woman or something like that. And I was like, first of all, it came on at the perfect time, and then it was like, yeah, like I get, like when I remember watching this as a kid, totally thinking that objects had that kind of power and had that kind of mysticism to them. Like, I think this is a book I should do. Like, I want to explore this more. And so it ended up kind of, we had a lot of fun writing it. And we were disappointed that it didn't do well. And now it's funny, like people steal it off my table at events and stuff like that. And now that I've got copies of it, it's like, oh, wow, like it's really cool. Can I see that book? And so, it's like one of those, we publish it crazy cheap. It's like $10. And it's like costs us $3, it's like $10. So it's like makes a good profit and people can afford it. And they buy a book and then they buy, let me add this book to it. And so it's really gained like a new life, which is really cool for me.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
It's an awesome topic. Do you feel like the show that Haunted Attachment show, the Haunted Collector with Zaffis, do you believe that pulled anything from it or added any fuel to your sales?
I think, I think we have a whole chapter with John, and we interviewed him and stuff. And I'm pretty sure the book being written predates the show. And then I think by the time it was published, the show was on. Yep. And so it's a little bit different because the Haunted Collector seems to really focus on that every haunted object is evil, or evil or demonic. People freak out when they know that, like, no, dude, I've literally held Annabelle in my hands before. Like, it used to not be under lock and key. You say, I still have do not touch, but you can touch it, right?
I hate dolls.
So I love John. I love what he does. And so it was funny because he did an event here in Fort Myers like last year around this time. And I was like, John, dude, do you even remember doing this interview in this book? And he's like, I have never even seen that book. And he knows both Tim and I, he knows Tim probably more than me. And I'm like, dude, like here's a chapter that has you. And he's like, oh my God. He's like, can I sign that chapter? I'm like, yeah, sign like, your chapter. And then of course that copy got stolen. So I think the media always moves the thing. Once you have a TV show and stuff like that about a certain topic, I don't think my books on the Bridgewater Triangle would be as accessible to people if the Bridgewater Triangle documentary hadn't come out and that, like, the spirit of it hadn't been kind of, recycled. So, I always like to think of it the other way. I don't like to think that people like it because of my books. No, people like it and they find my books. So
these are raw, man. It's nice to have that, I guess.
I'm with you. I hate to be rude, but I really, actually, you have to roll because I'm about
It's fine.
half hour past my bedtime.
Yeah, we've had you for almost 2 hours now, Chris. I appreciate you sticking in.
I used to be a wild man, but now I have to wake up at 4:00 to get to school. So,
oh, great. Well, good for you, man. Keep doing those good things, and keep us in touch about your book. We'll put it on our website, and
very cool.
Make sure people buy it. Thank you very much, Chris.
We'll put it on the Facebook.
I appreciate it. Thank you guys very much for having me on.
Anytime, man. All right, so that was a good conversation with Chris. Brendan, I'm sorry that you missed more than half of that. That was we talked about the triangle.
I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, shit happens, man.
Yeah, I feel bad though.
It's all right. Fix it.
You know, stuff happens, but I don't like it. It's the hair. It's the hair.
Yeah.
It's unruly.
Yeah, I went ahead and did this over the weekend, so yeah, I don't have that problem. I hear you. So, what do you think? What are your? Did you catch any of it? What are your overall thoughts? Did you?
I caught some of it. It was
the Pukwudgie. The Pukwudgie? Did you get any of the Pukwudgie?
No. What was that?
Pukwudgie. We talked about this creature here. It's found in the lovely. It's found in your area. It's like an elemental. Some people think it looks more like this, which of course that's the.
I've seen that on Union Street.
Then sometimes people get confused with this. This is the Dover Demon. I don't know. We talked all about that. We talked about Bridgewater. We talked about the Hockomock Swamp. We talked about stuff down in Florida. This really creepy cemetery where you feel like you're in a bubble, where you can't hear anything, you can't see anything, and then there's 7 children that all died on the same day, all murdered by their friggin' babysitter, and they're all buried together, and they play hide and seek and all sorts of like crazy stories that like I want to go to Florida and just like investigate the paranormal down there. I don't want to go to Disney World or any of that shit.
See, I don't know, because the Florida man itself, the living Florida man, scares me enough, let alone whatever happens below the surface.
Right, exactly.
Imagine how crazy that is.
I haven't been to see my Miami Dolphins play at home, so maybe I'll catch a game next year, and maybe I'll go find me a Pukwudgie. I don't know.
But you want to take a trip? You let me know.
Yeah, sure. I'm always up for some Dolphins football and some ghost investigating in Florida. So, I mean, is that even though I caught the this round of COVID that I have, I caught it from my boss who just came from Florida. Of course, I wouldn't go to the COVID infested areas of Florida like she did, like Disney World or Harry Potter or any of that stuff. But yeah, whatever.
I saw that you had COVID. I was wondering how you feel.
Fucking again, dude. Again. And I gave it to everybody I know. Now everybody's sick. And, and now I have a nice 5 days out of work for no reason whatsoever. And I don't have the sick time to cover it. But whatever.
See, that's the worst. That's the worst part about that, I think.
I wasn't even trying to get it. I didn't go on vacation. No. I didn't get to go to fucking Florida. I don't know.
You just get stuck with it. So, buddy, we got a few minutes. I think that's good.
God, I can't do that.
While we have a few minutes here left.
Yes.
There's a big story coming out of Major League Baseball. And we haven't been able to say that a lot.
Right.
And I want to get your opinion on it. It's something that I've been paying close attention to for like a few different reasons.
Yeah.
One, it involves the biggest star that baseball has had probably the last 40, 50 years.
Since like Babe Ruth. Yeah, I think he's like the probably as big as Babe Ruth once was. Well, maybe not as big as Babe, but he's like, he has the potential to be the next Babe Ruth.
I think he's bigger because the way the game is now, it's definitely bigger, right? Of course, I think he is. It's only because it reaches millions of homes, right?
It does.
The MLB reaches millions of homes every night. Yep. He is also not only a star in America, but Japan.
He's a rock star.
And he's the biggest star. Like,
Baseball is huge in Japan. I don't think people realize how big baseball is in Japan.
If anybody's listening and doesn't know who we're talking about right now, we're talking about the one and only Shohei Ohtani.
Yep.
He is a freak of nature.
The Dodgers he's with now, right? He went to the Dodgers?
Yeah, he's signed.
Because the Dodgers are taking everybody. Sons of bitches, but they still can't win a
and this is karma for that bullshit contract.
Oh,
but whatever. That fucking contract is it? Oh, me too. Listen, you're not going to get any arguments here. Yeah, but right. So his interpreter was caught betting on baseball through an illegal bookie,
wiring from his bank account into a bookie's account,
right?
Into
millions
a mob bookie?
of dollars.
Yeah, into like a mob bookie, into a bookie.
Yeah. It's like one of those style bookies. Yeah. It was supposed to be like a mob book. So he got caught I think it was like over $4 million.
Oh God!
Yeah, so not only is he a gambler, but he's one of us, and he's bad at it.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Just real bad.
This is the interpreter, right? I have trouble with this one. I don't. Go on.
Here's my problem. He's saying it's his interpreter.
Yep.
And everybody. So this is where everybody gets lost. Everybody's saying, well, how could it be his interpreter? That's just the guy that works for him and blah, blah, blah. First of all, this is not just some dude that was hired by an MLB team. This is a guy that he grew up with from the age of like 6 or 7.
Oh, wow. So he's known him.
And they've been like best. Yeah, they've been best friends. Like this isn't just a working relationship. This is.
This isn't somebody that the Dodgers or that the Angels found for him and just like assigned him.
This is somebody that Shohei brought with him. He brought him.
Oh boy!
But the worst part is Shohei speaks English.
He does, yeah. He says in interviews, "I speak English," and anyway, that's his response.
Yeah, I don't know how well versed he is in the English language,
right?
But he does speak some English. Like he does understand it, and
he's sure been on the West Coast for like 5 years now. He's got to know something beyond.
He had to pick something up. Now I don't think that anybody in their right mind would just not see $4 million coming out of their account.
That's a lot of money. Even though you're making a shit ton of money, that's still a lot of money. And I don't know.
To come out of one account, these guys keep it a bunch of different accounts. So
yeah, right.
That's got to be. But so
why would you give your even though he's your friend, but why would you give this guy your bank account information?
Right. So now they're saying that he was just covering his betting debts, which that might be true.
Yeah,
I
can see that.
But regardless, you have a guy, one of the greatest hitters of all time, if not the greatest hitter of all time, banned from baseball for not even betting on his own team. You know what I mean? He was betting. Oh, he might have bet on his team, but to win or whatever it was.
Right. Pete Rose.
And now it looks like the MLB is just turning a blind eye to this.
They're completely turning a blind eye because this guy's been the cash cow. They've rode this guy for years, for the last 2-3 years, because he's not only an ace pitcher, but he's a home run hitter. We haven't seen a ball player like this since Babe Ruth, and Babe Ruth made baseball what it is today. So this guy could take baseball into the 21st century easily, where baseball is losing a lot of fandom because it's kind of slow and boring and da-da-da-da-da. I mean, I love the slow and boring, but I mean, that's just people want fast action, and that's just not baseball. But this guy adds
people's
that
attention
flash.
spans are very short.
Like when Mark McGwire and Sammy Sosa were doing the home run battle, and then they came out. Oh, but by the way, these guys are like loaded on steroids. But we're just going to ignore all that because it brought attention to the sport at the time.
Because it was a couple of years after the strike, and they were trying to get fans back.
Yeah, exactly. But
if you're Major League Baseball, I saw this today. Should Major League Baseball suspend him until the investigation is over?
Absolutely. Pending
now, mind you, this investigation is not going to be over anytime soon.
Right. This
is a very long. We're talking the FBI is involved in this. This isn't just a Major League Baseball thing. This has gotten
shouldn't be.
This has gotten way out of hand.
Yeah, it should be third party.
Right.
But if you're going to take,
because if it was up to the MLB, they'd shove it.
They'd probably put it in an envelope and forget about it in the bottom drawer for as long as they possibly could, because this is money in the bank with this guy, and if they lose this guy, oh my God, they're going to lose so much. But that's the other thing. I have always been a big fan of Pete Rose. I have always been a big proponent for let the man be in the Hall of Fame. I mean, all right, he fucked up as a coach, whatever. He gambled. Everybody gambles, but whatever. Even that, he was all right. Fuck his coaching career, but his hitting career, his baseball player career, he should be in the Hall of Fame for that alone. He's a monster hitter. He's a monster fielder. It's why they don't. it's such a kick in the ass for me as a fan, as a lifelong fan. It's a kick in the ass. I can't imagine how Pete Rose feels. Same thing going on. Same for much more money, probably. And
I would assume
this guy, they're just like turning a blind eye. They're just turning a blind eye. What a kick in the ass.
It's a big slap in the face to Pete Rose. And while we don't know what he gambled on. We don't know whatever.
Right.
But the fact that he was gambling on Major League Baseball games, but he still paid for it. You know what I mean? He had, no matter what, there's no way anybody could actually believe that Shohei Ohtani knew nothing about this.
I think Pete bet on his team to win, and then he took his team on to victory. So, I mean, really, is that gambling? Are you really? I mean, it's gambling, of course, but I mean, it's not like you're betting on your team to lose and then you're throwing the game. That would be the Chicago White Sox in 1918. The Black Sox scandal. That absolutely screwed them. Although then again, those guys, they were getting really super underpaid. Were treated like pieces of property by Wrigley.
So that's where all this starts, is 1919 with the Black Sox scandal, and they get involved with all these mobsters from Boston and Chicago and all that stuff. Threw games in the World Series, lost the World Series because Comiskey was screwing them over, essentially, not paying them when they were supposed to be paid.
All right.
So then,
no ball player really got paid, but in those days.
So between that and then they banned Shoeless Joe Jackson. So after they banned Shoeless Joe Jackson, when Pete Rose came up, they had to ban Pete Rose.
Right.
And so they've stayed consistent with this no gambling.
No, I don't know the finalities of with Pete Rose's case. Did they wait until the investigation was done until they suspended him for life? I would imagine so. Did they let him keep coaching while the investigation was pending? Was he still coaching? I don't even remember. That was a while ago.
I don't remember everything, but from what I remember, he had a deal with the commissioner at that time. I forget who it was, that he was going to be banned for life. But at the end of I forget how many years they had agreed on, he was going to be reinstated so he could get into the Hall of Fame. And then that commissioner ended up dying.
Oh, right. Before Bud
Selig. And then now, that was before Bud Selig. And now Pete Rose still banned from the Hall of Fame.
That's not right.
And now we have this huge scandal, and the MLB is like, well, he didn't know.
That's bullshit. You gotta fucking. You better investigate.
It's a tough pill to swallow. Not only investigate it, but he's got and I don't want to see Shohei go down or anything like that. But I was just reading something on my way in that Shohei was also the guy that was taking the bets was telling people that Shohei Ohtani was his client.
Ugh. So that was probably the thing the whole time. So he probably was, and just having.
So whether it was just to gather up, whether it was just somebody bragging or anything like that, Shohei was involved in this some way or another.
Right.
There has to be some kind of punishment for this. I don't want to see Shohei. There's no chance. But I don't want that.
That would ruin baseball. I don't know. That would ruin baseball.
It would kill any momentum that they've gotten over the last few years. This kid's a certified stud.
He's unbelievable. I don't see him pitching his entire career, but I mean, he's still a rock star.
He's not pitching this year because he has that elbow thing.
Right. But he's still hitting the shit out of the ball, right?
Even if he doesn't pitch, he's still a 300 hitter with 40 home runs.
Yeah.
He's still nasty.
Still pretty good hitter. Either way. Even if he does a couple innings of a relief or something, for the rest of his career and just hits the shit out of the ball. And I could
see that being a real putt. Yeah. This would definitely sink MLB though if it comes down that he was betting on games. If they can prove it, they're in trouble.
Yeah. Especially if the FBI is involved, because now you take you take that interest that MLB has, you take that out of it. The FBI doesn't have any interest in what Ohtani is going to bring to baseball. They don't really care. They just right, wrong, or indifferent, and
they don't give a shit. Yeah, they don't.
When that hammer comes down, it's probably going to hurt a little bit. But
and then big news coming out of about a half hour ago, they announced a signing. Somebody I thought the Red Sox were going to get.
Oh God! Oh.
And Jordan Montgomery signed with the Diamondbacks 1 year, $25 million.
Well, that's too bad.
Another missed opportunity. I thought he was for sure going to the Red Sox.
Yeah, we really haven't gotten anybody to speak of this offseason.
No, they signed some 35-year-old pitcher from Pittsburgh that was released yesterday.
Yeah, they picked up everybody else's trash.
Buddy, you're a big Red Sox fan.
I am.
Why does this ownership continue to slap their fans in the face and act like a mid-market team?
Honestly, I've heard it in the media. Whoa, shit! Where did I go? Hold on. Hold on. Where did I go? Hold on, I disappeared. Hold on, my camera came unplugged. I think. What the fuck? Hold on a second. So I'm gonna talk. I guess I'm gonna talk as I try and focus on this. All right, screw it. I think honestly, I've heard a lot of people talk about this before in the past, and in the last like 3 or 4 months or so. I think we're coming to the fruition of that John Henry might actually be selling the Boston Red Sox, and he's just kind of like minimizing the team down to just pure operation, and I don't know, going on what he can. I think it's terrible.
I hope so, because he's ruining this franchise.
He's tearing it down, man. It's absolutely terrible what he's doing. I can't stand it.
I just don't get it, because it's not like, oh boy, I lost Buddy. Hopefully he'll be back in a minute. We'll see if he pops in here. But as we were just saying, yeah, I think the Red Sox are really in trouble. There he is.
Ugh,
they're not spending any money.
No, technology too,
they have
buddy.
a stud third baseman that can draw people in.
Yeah,
but that's all they have.
We got.
They have that one kid, the pitcher. He came up last year.
Yeah, we got Trevor Story. Right? We got Rafael Devers. He's a hell of a hitter. I remember him playing in Kentucky. He's an average, a little over average.
Trevor Story, maybe. Not the Trevor Story.
Not the Story we were looking for in Boston last year. He was what he played like. He played in like maybe 50 games. I don't even think that many. I think I'm giving him too much credit. He did fairly well towards the end of the season, and then the season ended, and it's like, oh shit, and that was our season with Trevor Story.
Would you want to see the Red Sox sign Trevor Bauer?
Maybe. I don't know if it would help. I think I don't know. I want to say they can. They've won a lot of. Not that really spring training games really matter. They've won a lot of spring training games. They have that new guy Rafaela in the outfield. I don't know. Let's just. I think they need some pitching. Like whoa.
So the Red Sox needing pitching. Would you want them to sign Trevor Bauer?
Yeah, I get. Yeah, I don't know. I can't. I don't know. I don't.
So I'm a fit. I don't know how much of the audience knows this or whatever, but I'm a diehard Philadelphia Phillies fan. Mm-hmm. I love my Phillies. The one thing that we've lacked these last few postseason runs, which has been magical for a Phillies fan because we don't get this often,
right,
is pitching. And I would flip a lid and lose my mind in joy if they signed Trevor Bauer.
Where's he coming from? Where's Trevor? Tell us a little bit more about Trevor Bauer.
Free agent, dude. So Trevor Bauer was one of the top pitchers in the league. Obviously, he played for Cleveland.
Oh, Cleveland. Okay.
Traded. I think he played
for the Mexican Diablos Rojos.
He played for
Mexico.
Yeah, against the Yankees yesterday or the day before.
Yeah, you shut him out.
It looked good.
I see that, yeah.
So Trevor Bauer was accused of sexual assault a few years ago.
Oh, yeah. Oh, all right. Oh, okay. I had him on my fantasy team. I know exactly who you're talking about. Yeah, he's pretty hot. Yeah. Well, he was.
All those allegations were proven false.
Oh, good.
There was text messages on his side proving everything. There's video evidence. There's everything that Trevor Bauer said that happened.
Nice.
And he hasn't been given another chance, mostly because I think teams are afraid of what the public's going to say.
Mm-hmm.
But I also subscribe to the theory that people don't give a shit if you win games.
Right.
Like, people will forget about a lot.
Yeah, of course they will. They forgot about Michael Vick. He went on to play football. They forgot about all these awful ball players that took steroids. That all went away. You know, Barry Bonds. He's not in the Hall of Fame yet, but I mean, there's a chance that he could get elected.
I don't think he's ever getting. I don't think he's ever getting.
I hope not. I really hope not. I think that will. That I like
think
Roger Clemens.
2 reasons though. I don't think it's like the Clemens thing. Barry Bonds was an asshole to the media.
Yeah. Okay. That's
a lot of people forget that, and then who controls? You know what I mean? The media controls who gets in the Major League Baseball. Like, this is one that they're holding on to here. Like, they're
I hope they do. I hope they do because the juice isn't like.
You say that, but David Ortiz got in and admittedly used steroids. Like, and I know he's a big, lovable character, and I think he's the greatest clutch. I am not trashing David Ortiz. I think he is the greatest clutch hitter in the history of baseball.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Like, when he came up and it was late in the game, I don't think anybody could say that they didn't think it was going to go out of the park. Like,
right. I had that hope.
Even if the bases were loaded. If I was a pitcher and the bases were loaded and they were down 1 run, I would walk David Ortiz to tie the game to get to the next guy.
Right. Yeah, he's
But the problem was in their prime, their lineup was stacked.
Yeah, it was. Oh, for sure. Oh my God.
So they
20th anniversary. 20th anniversary this year of that magical season, that magical 2004 ALCS run. Oh my God. Blows my mind just watching it again. But yeah, they were stacked. That was a good rivalry too. The Yankees-Red Sox that in 03, 04, 05. Oh my God. Yep. It was so much. I was watching a clip.
Height.
Yeah.
I was watching a clip. That rivalry.
Probably the 04, the win there, but I was watching a clip today of it was Pedro Martinez was on the mound. We were versus the Yankees, and I forgot who. I think it was Clemens was up before him, and he hit one of our guys, and Martinez hit one of their guys, and then Clemens was up, and Clemens came near, not even near, but near Martinez.
Manny?
Yeah, Manny, and then Manny just used that for an excuse and just charged him out and tried to fight. And Pedro Martinez took the 72-year-old, I think he's the bench coach of the Yankees, and threw him headfirst into the turf. Oh my God, it was a shit show and a half. It was great. But yeah, those
Don Zimmer.
Years. Yeah, Don Zimmer. Yeah, that prick. Some good years.
Guy was 70 years old and got thrown.
Yeah, he got manhandled by Pedro. One of the greatest pitchers of the game, by the way. But anyway, didn't like old men.
Pedro was great, dude.
Yeah, Pedro was great.
Curt
Schilling was great, but he gets a bad rap because he collects World War II memorial objects and because he has Nazi memorabilia and people think he's a Nazi.
I don't know. I don't think that's the only reason.
Yeah,
I think Curt Schilling has dug himself quite a hole.
Yeah,
he's dug himself. Well, I mean, he did.
The video game thing.
Rob Rhode Island of all that money.
Yeah, he fucked. That game was terrible too. By the way, I bought that. That was horrible. But I don't even remember the name of it. It was terrible. I'm like, oh, Curt Schilling, this is a new game. I got $50 in my pocket. I'm gonna spend it on this. Oh, it was fucking terrible.
You know how many Red Sox fans probably did the same thing you did?
Yeah, exactly. Just because it's Curt Schilling's company, and especially from Rhode Island, I went to give back to Rhode Island, invest in Rhode Island.
Yeah.
No, we got fucked on that. But
where do you see the Red Sox finishing this year?
I don't see us in the cellar. I think it's potential that we make a wild card run. But I don't
really.
I think that's being optimistic. I just think if they play good sound baseball throughout the season, I don't think they'll be on fire at all. I think if they just stay in it, maybe third or fourth place. That division's tough too, because Toronto Blue Jays and the Baltimore Orioles and the New York Yankees are stacked. The Yankees are so stacked, and it's so scary. Baltimore's so scary. Toronto's so scary. I don't see us doing anything against those guys.
What makes Baltimore so scary is the fact that they're so young.
Right. Tampa Bay even has a decent team that we can't usually get past, and it's just I don't know what we're gonna do this season.
I don't think the Red Sox even tried to compete this year.
No, last year they didn't try to compete either. They did.
No.
They did have decent numbers in spring training. Some of their prospects look promising. Like I said, they got Rafaela. I think he said 4 or 5 home runs in spring training, which is nice to see. But I don't like its pitching. I think it's just in the toilet, and they just need to add more get more prospects in that department, or maybe just get more. They got, what was it? Guy with a W. Not Whitaker. See, this is where Joe would be able to fill in the blanks for me. Christ. Whitlock. Yeah, that guy with Whitlock. He's okay. Yep. He's like,
I saw Tristan Cash just absolutely murder a ball the other day.
Yeah. So they're doing some things, but it's spring training. So
right. They can hit. The question was never if they can hit the ball.
Right. It's pitching, and it's the bullpen.
And that's where it's always going to be one.
And that's where they lose games, is in the bullpen completely. But I don't know. It's a long season, so we'll see what happens.
Also, one more thing I wanted to hop on before we bounce off.
Yep.
All right, the Patriots. And I know you're loving this. Like, I know you're loving this. My torment is your joy.
Oh, absolutely.
I am so sick of Robert Kraft acting like we're idiots.
Yeah, right.
I've said it from day one once I started seeing some of the clips. That dynasty piece
crap
was nothing but a hit piece on Bill Belichick.
Yep.
Right? Now, players that were participated in and didn't participate in are, I don't know if you saw this, but Wes Welker, who I can't stand.
Really? You don't like Wes Welker?
Nope. I liked him when he was
He's like one of my favorite coaches down in Miami now.
towards the end of his run, right? He was miserable here. He didn't compete. He wasn't the same guy that he was. Like, he didn't want to compete for anything. He wanted everything handed to him. And I get it. You earned a lot, but that's not how it works. Like, that's just not. Like, you knew that. That's how he even got his chance. You know what I mean? Was because of that that culture. So he was saying, I just watched a clip of Julian Edelman and Matt Slater talking, and he said that Aaron Hernandez got away with everything in practice. He could do whatever he wanted. He did all this stuff. And Julian Edelman goes, I don't know what practice you were at, Matt, but I used to see Bill chew Aaron out all the time. He's like, and he goes, so where's all this stuff? So that's just one of the lies. And then, like, there's a bunch of other stuff that they're talking about with Bill. Like, they painted him as a monster. We all know that Bill was demanding. But the one thing that I can say as a Pats fan that I've always appreciated too, after guys left and even when guys like aged out and all that stuff, they always said that there's a side of Bill Belichick that you don't see.
Right.
You know what I mean? Right behind closed doors.
I'm sure there is.
He really cares about his players. I think we've even seen it like on TV when Randy Moss threw that Halloween party. He showed up dressed like a pirate. You know what I mean? Like, that's a guy that has a sense of humor, like, that's good with his players. Like, he might not have been the most approachable guy at times. I don't think he was a monster. Like, he was tough.
No, I just don't think he didn't give the media anything. But I mean, that was his, and that was his style. And that's honestly, I think that's what the Patriot way, I think, is what won so many. It kept things tight. It kept people focused on what they needed to do. It kept there's a lot of bullshit that swirls around week to week in the NFL about anything and everything. And if you focus on any of that, that's easily going to distract you from what you got to do. So, I mean, you gotta kind of celebrate that he pushed for that silence, and he pushed for that keeping the media out, because I mean, if you're gonna look at another team, you want to, like, if you're talking about what your team's your plan is gonna be on Sunday, I mean, it's kind of like giving away your hand. I don't
giving away everything.
He was a smart player, dude. I have no, as much as I don't dislike the New England Patriots as much as I dislike the belligerent
fans,
bandwagon Patriot fan that would tortured me as a Dolphins fan, and now couldn't even tell you maybe 5 players from the current New England Patriots because they don't follow the game because they're not winning anymore.
Right. There is a lot of fans like that.
Yeah.
My family's had
cats.
So my family's had season tickets since 1994. That was our first season. Right.
Nice.
So we've been in this like 30 years this year.
Yeah. It was like Bledsoe's second year, right?
First year. His rookie
year.
We got tickets.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Jesus.
But with Kraft, who I've always had a lot of respect for, I think we're seeing a different side now that Bill's out of the way.
Right.
He legit is now saying that he is disappointed in how this turned out. I don't think I need to remind everybody this was a Kraft team production.
Right. Right.
Just stand by it. Say you fucked up.
Right.
Just be like, hey, listen, we understand how the documentary came out. It's our fault. We produced it. We should have been more careful with how we edited things.
Oh, they totally shit on Belichick the whole time.
But now that they're claiming ignorance, it's like that's not okay.
You can't. You
like,
guys
don't.
You set out to do this, and then you see the response, and you be like, "Oh, our bad." No.
Oh no. Oh no. The Patriots fans are upset with us. We can't do this anymore. It's like you trashed the man.
Yeah, right. Completely. He brought you not only 1 or 2. He brought you what, 6 championships, and just
6.
Unimaginable.
And 10 Super Bowl, like 10 Super Bowl seasons.
Runs. Yeah, right.
10 good years we were in the Super Bowl.
Winning years every single year, except the last 3 have been a little shaky. But I mean,
right.
He probably hasn't had the amount of support either.
They were stuck in cap hell after Brady left. That's why Brady left, because he knew he wasn't getting any help. They were stuck with a lot of bad, expiring contracts. So they had to pay the piper. Just like eventually the Chiefs are going to be in cap hell. Like that. Right. Eventually you kick the can down the road. Eventually that road comes to an end.
Right.
Like,
that's too bad. But
so now, I mean, and you're not going to like this. It looks like the Patriots are probably going to get the quarterbacks that I wanted all along. It looks like Daniels is going to end up being passed on by Washington. For some reason, they struck a love with J.J. McCarthy. I don't know where this comes. Every year, there's a player in the draft that jumps up out of nowhere and then gets drafted way too high. And then they're like, well, how could this happen?
Yeah. Oh, why
and it's like, I don't know. 2 weeks ago, this guy was a 3rd-round pick.
Right. He was like 25 last week. Now he's number
like,
2.
Number 2.
Yeah, he's pushing a lot of guys out of the way. For what? What has he done since then? Nothing. Rumor.
He had a good pro day. Congratulations. In a workout that it's set up for you to look at.
Yeah.
You look good.
You played for a great university. You played under a great coach in a great system.
But they never threw the ball to win.
Right. I'm not sold on. I'm not sold on any of these guys in the draft really until they actually play, because as good as all these Heisman Trophy players are, Heisman Trophy winners are, and these guys who don't even win the Heisman, they're just amazing ball players in college. It doesn't transition into the NFL.
I think.
So when I actually see that,
I think I'm a big Caleb guy. We know this.
Yeah,
big Caleb guy. Love him.
I'm not really.
I think that kid's going to be real special. I think the Bears are actually doing a good job of putting a team around him.
Yeah, the Bears. Holy shit.
Like, they're stacking up, and I think they're going to build a line through the draft. I think that's a smart way to do this.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, get a left tackle. You have 2 first-round picks, and then you have a couple seconds. Use that on the line, unless you can get another receiver in the second round, but you can take a tackle in the first again. Like, build up a line for him, and then you'll be all right.
Yeah, you got to support your quarterback, especially a new guy. He's got no one to watch. He's going to probably start, right? You would think.
Yeah. He's starting. He's a day one starter.
Yeah. He's going to need support.
They don't have anybody to back him up. Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
And then at number 2 is the big question. For a while, it was going to be Daniels, and now some reason it looks like it's going McCarthy. At number 3, it looks like the Patriots will either take Daniels or May. I just beg that they stay away from Drake May.
Right. You don't want him at all.
I do not want. I just don't think. I don't think this is the right system for him.
Drake May is Louisiana. Who is he coming from?
No, North Carolina.
North Carolina.
Carolina. Daniels is the LSU Heisman Trophy winner. That is he's a dual threat. He can throw the ball all over the yard. Like, very good. He's a little bit older coming out of the draft. I think he's 25. He played in, I forget where he played before. He played in LSU, but he transferred in LSU and then played a couple of years there.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's great. Like, I think in any other year, if it wasn't Caleb Williams, you would be thinking about Daniels as number 1. And if he falls to 3, it's a miracle. Like, I'll be stoked. And not as stoked as I'd be if Caleb Williams somehow did, but he ain't going nowhere. He's going into 1.
Right.
But Daniels is the next guy. And then the Patriots are talking about trading out of the 3rd pick too. So I don't.
Why would they do that?
It would be the most Patriots thing of all time.
It would be, but I mean, why would you do that? You could grab a wide receiver or a quarterback and build around that. But why would you get out of that when you have nothing?
If you're the Patriots, the only reason you trade out of the number 3 pick is if Minnesota comes with their 2 first round picks.
Yep. Yeah, 4.
That's the only way.
I lost you for a second. You kind of froze there, Brendan. Minnesota trade their 2 first-round picks for what?
The third pick.
Oh yeah, maybe.
You want to move up?
They've talked about in the media. They've talked about in the media the Vikings trading the Dolphins. Oh my God, it hurts me to say this, Tua, for their 2 first-round picks. I don't think they should do that. I think that'd be stupid all the time they've invested in Tua, to be honest with you. But Brendan bounced out really quick. He's having some technical difficulties, but I will continue talking. In recent news, the Minnesota Vikings, or this is the conjecture that one of the Yahoo sports writers or idiot sports writers out there had, was that the Miami Dolphins should trade their starting quarterback to a Tagovailoa. I still can't pronounce his last name. I'm sorry, Tua. I still think you're a great quarterback. And get their 2 first-round picks. And why would they do that? Why? Just I don't know. I don't understand it. But I think it's a good part now to wrap up tonight's show. Brendan Bam's goat fell off. His technology fell out, and I'm left sitting here. It's been a very long, juggernaut show. I want to say special thanks to Chris Balzano at Spooky Balzano, trippinglegends.com. You can check him out. He has, what did he say, 12 books. He's coming out with a new one. They're generating a second version of the haunted objects. He has like love. I don't even want to say the titles because I'll fuck it up. Chris Balzano. Check him out. Check us out at a van down by the Riv. I didn't even do it right. I'm a van down by the Riv. It's a van down by the Riv podcast.com. Holy shit. Coronavirus has me like something well, so I'm going to cut us here. But check us out on Facebook. You can see us on Twitch. You can see us on YouTube. Check us out on our channel. Check us out next Tuesday live at 8 o'clock as we welcome James Anito and Father Bob Bailey of Paranormal State, both demonologists. Both are bringing back up the the Presidium of St. Michael. It's a demonologist group here in Rhode Island. Father Bob was a Catholic priest for numerous years here in Rhode Island. He's retired from what I understand, and he's relaunching his mission to fight the demons. So on the Tuesday after Easter Sunday, we are welcoming 2 demonologists, James Anito and Father Bob Bailey. It should be quite the religious experience. Tune in next Tuesday. That's all I have for you guys. I hope you have a good week. Thanks for tuning in. And this has been the Ghost and the Goat, even though the goat hasn't been in the barn for very long. But we are out. Thank you very much. Have a good week.